it's been more than 5 months since Jeffrey Epstein died in a New York jail cell where he was awaiting trial on child sex trafficking charges. And it's been more than a decade since he was convicted of soliciting an underage girl for prostitution. But today, several major institutions are still grappling with their ties to him. Among them, MIT. The director of the university's renowned media lab, Joey Ito, resigned in September after it came to light that he solicited donations from Epstein for years after the billionaire's 2008 conviction, marking the contributions as anonymous to avoid scrutiny. And last week, an external review commissioned by MIT and conducted by Goodwin Procter, a law firm, determined that several other top university officials were aware of the $750,000 in donations from Epstein post-conviction, and that he was allowed to visit the campus at least 9 times despite his level 3 sex offender status. The university's president, Raphael Reif, has also apologized. And while investigators largely cleared him, saying he was not contemporaneously aware of and had no role in approving the donations, the report has prompted renewed calls from many for Reif to step down, including from Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung, who recently wrote, "Apparently accountability isn't taught at MIT, and it won't be as long as President Raphael Reif remains at the helm." She joins me now, along with former State Attorney General and former Democratic candidate for governor Scott Harshbarger, now senior counsel at Kasner and Edwards. By the way, we also invited MIT to send a representative. They did not even dignify our request with a response. It's good to see you both. So you argued Reif's got to go. Why?
You know, there are so many things that went wrong. The Goodwin report, I actually think it was more damaging to MIT than what we learned in the fall. And what we learned that Reif, even though the report exonerated him, we learned that he actually did know something about Epstein's donations. And they couldn't equivocally say he didn't know. And there was that one part where he actually wrote notes on an agenda saying that I did talk about Professor Ito with Epstein, so he knew something.
But he says he doesn't know why.
Right.
The report says he doesn't know why he wrote that down.
Which seems kind of unbelievable. And so one of the questions is, should he have known? Yeah, he probably should have known. 3 members of his senior team knew about it. And so there's got to be some kind of accountability here.
His defense seems to be plausible deniability. Does he have it, Scott?
Well, that is the defense. But what you both see is with the president, and then is the column that Shirley wrote in addition, the chairman of the board also was aware of some of this. Now, I wasn't aware specifically, but this is where the challenge comes for leaders in these kinds of institutions. Why not ask more questions? Yes, it may be the responsibility of other officials, and you don't want to micromanage, but when you're presented with an issue like this, not to ask a question, what's our policy? Who is this person? What do I need to know more about?
But that's exactly what the board chair told Shirley. I don't do micromanagement. And you took issue with that.
I do, because I think that's the real loss here. Yeah. That is the overall accountability of leadership at the top, the people who are there to help support the executive and to ask those questions that sometimes others are not able to do.
I think it's very telling that the report says that no one's at fault here, because we never really had a policy regarding taking controversial donors. And as I wrote in my column, all you needed was common sense and good judgment to know not to take money for Epstein, or at least to ask questions.
Do they have a policy about having a level 3 sex offender on the campus 9 times between 2013 and 2017 and without notifying young students roughly of the age of his victims?
And as I wrote, that alone, Reif should have stepped down and resigned over to allow that to happen. And so here you have a university saying, well, we don't have a policy, so I guess no one will lose their job over this.
Just on that, the thing that I've been most impressed with in the work that we've done in independent investigations in schools has been when chair people of the boards have stood up and said, we're going to take responsibility. We're going to find out what occurred. We want to know what the facts are. We want to know who's responsible, one way or the other.
Well, didn't Reif do that, though? I forget the chair for a minute. Reif commissioned this Goodwin Procter thing. I mean, by the way, one of the problems with Goodwin Procter, I should say, is I learned from one of the stories in the Globe, they actually have represented MIT in some proceedings, and now they're investigating MIT?
That generally, that's not good practice. The fact is, the independent investigation key is that people have had no prior affiliation. You're bringing them in to find the facts as fully as you can and let them decide what to do about that.
Can we go down Mass Ave a little bit to Harvard? under $1 million at MIT. One of the big differences, most of that was after his conviction in 2008. Harvard took $9 million, but according to Larry Bacow, the president, almost all of it before the conviction. He says $186,000 is left. He's donating that to groups that deal with human trafficking and sexual assault. Is that enough out of Harvard?
No.
What should they be doing?
The question here is, what's the culture of a place? What's the leadership going to do about this? Now, if you believe this is okay to do, then stand up, have a policy about it, make sure everybody understands it.
What's okay to do? Take money from a pedophile billionaire?
If you look around, one of the things that they're seeing are many of the institutions have taken money from the Sacklers and others of that type. That may be the issue, but the leadership, this is tone at the top, Jim, that we talk about all the time, and here is a major nonprofit educational institution that for whatever reason did not read the paper and does not see that they're held to the same standards to do the right thing, not just they have a right to do it.
Well, let me add one thing to Scott Harshbarger's list, and I know from having known you for years that's on your list too, is transparency. It's one of the things I was stunned when Bacow also hired a firm to look at this thing. He tells the Boston Globe that he will not commit to releasing the report. At the end, we'll decide when we see what it says. That's not exactly a transparent act.
I think what we learned with the MIT story, I mean, one of the reasons why it broke is there were whistleblowers, remember? Because MIT at first didn't want to say too much, and then dimes began dropping. And I think the same thing could happen at Harvard. In the MIT report, Harvard shows up here and there. So I'm hoping that because of the pressure at MIT, it will force Harvard to say something. To
More to come from you on MIT?
I think so.
In other words, yes. Quickly, before we go, we only have 30 seconds left. Give advice to the leaders of these schools. What are the one or two things they should always be doing? Not just MIT and Harvard, but all schools faced with donations.
Have the courage to ask questions. You're there as an independent member of a board. That's your responsibility for the mission, for the stewardship, yes, for loyalty to the school. But loyalty includes looking at the overall picture of having the courage to find the facts and decide what to do about those
I agree with
facts.
every word, but do you not think that every single person involved at least Googled Jeffrey Epstein post-2008 to find out he was a convicted sex offender?
Here's the question. If they didn't, why not, Jim? That's the question. It's not whether they did. It's why didn't you ask when there was obviously some controversy? You didn't want to know, and you didn't want to take responsibility for finding out.
Scott, it's good to see you. Thanks so much.
Keep
writing, Shirley. Really appreciate it. And again, MIT is welcome here anytime.